Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is the 13th episode of HawkBlogger Mornings. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at HawkBlogger. And these weekend editions are going to be variable in their timing. Some of it has to do with, want to get a little sleep on the weekends, want to make sure whoever's on with me also gets a chance to enjoy their weekend. So we'll figure out the timing. It probably will not be as consistent as it is during the week. But the bonus is for most sports radio and most podcast and most coverage, they don't do any weekend stuff. So hopefully you're happy to be here because I know I am, and I know Jeff at Real Jeff Simmons. I know you are. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm good. We're 3 weeks out, so I'm getting pumped up.
Yeah. How like you consume so much, you pay attention to so many things, you focus on the draft. Where is your heart kind of going? Any new revelations? Any new players you're starting to like or dislike? Players you like that you're liking less? Anything changing there?
I'm for the Seahawks. I'm still not sold on like edge rusher early, and I keep seeing that. Like I was listening to Mina Kimes the other day, and she's big on like edge rusher being like a huge need of the Seahawks. I don't see it like that, and she's really big on that, and she's a lot smarter than me when it comes to football. But I'm just so like hyper focused on offensive line and defensive tackle. And like I was just thinking about it this morning. Like I was reading reading an article about like all the defensive tackles that have hit in the last like 5 drafts. And I was just thinking about the Super Bowls, and it hasn't really been the edge rushers that have taken over these Super Bowls. And you think about it, it's been Chris Jones and Aaron Donald, and honestly, those guys are the best in the sport. But even when the Seahawks were great, like I remember there was that video with the Patriots.
Even Vita Vea.
And there was a video with the Patriots, and Ernie Adams has been doing some shows. And when they studied the Seahawks, the one guy that scared the crap out of them was Michael Bennett. And think about it, and they were talking about those old Super Bowls. It was Justin Tuck. It wasn't Strahan and Umenyiora. And it was just thinking about like, man, how great would it be to have one of those defensive tackle groups? And like, so I'm still stuck in this, like, I want offensive line so bad. And like, probably my 2 favorite players in this draft for the Seahawks are offensive guards. But like, I can't get that defensive tackle thing out of my head. And we're talking about defense today. So it's been like, I can't that's like the fantasy for like the Seahawks right now, because they were so bad at defensive tackle 2 years ago. And if they could turn this into like a dominant unit, like my just overall joy of this team and vision about where they're going would change dramatically. Because right now, you talked about in our show earlier this week, they're kind of stuck in the middle and not a great path out of it. So this draft is huge for them.
It is. And you're vocalizing, articulating what is a challenge. You've got limited draft capital and you've got significant needs, and you've got to decide where you want to spend it. And that's not easy to do. So I definitely feel that push and pull. And we've definitely talked a lot about the offensive line. Part of what we're going to do in this show, because we haven't really done a Jeff and Brian like mock draft madness kind of craziness for a little bit. So I took some inspiration because, like you, I've been listening. I don't just talk about it. I also listen. And I was listening to the Move the Sticks podcast with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. I like those guys. And I think they have a decently plugged in perspective, scouting perspective. And I don't always agree, but I think it's a decent point of view. And they did a offense only draft, and then they did a defense only draft of the first round and for both sides. And Jeff, listening to the defense only draft in the first round, they were drafting guys that were like 5th round players in the first round, because that's how thin this draft is on the defensive side of the ball. It was easy for them in the offense. When they got to the defense, it got really thin. And so what I thought about is, this defense is much farther away from being a quality defense than the offense. I think we both agree on that.
100%.
And so my thought was, okay, well, what if the Seahawks really decided we're going to try to really catch our defense up in this draft? What would that look like? I'm really curious where we end up with that. And I have a feeling it's not going to feel great, but I want to see what it looks like.
You're gonna have to pin me down to like not take an offensive lineman. I'm gonna need like a straight jacket. Like when some of these like guards or Zach Zinter's on the board in like the 5th round, and I'm gonna have to take a safety. You're gonna have to pin me down. I don't know what's gonna happen.
It's gonna be rough. It's gonna be rough. We're gonna get into it in a second. Before we do, I want to welcome a ton of new members. We just had a bunch of new members join the YouTube membership. Lance Johnson, welcome as a new YouTube member. Looks like a golfer. Love that. Bradley just joined as a new YouTube member. Jacob Moon just joined as a new YouTube member. And C-Luck51, or maybe that's Cluck51, also joined as a YouTube member. And so welcome to all the new YouTube members. Really, really love seeing the community grow. We are getting dozens and dozens of folks. I think we're going to be pushing 100 people on YouTube memberships in only a week or two, which is great. And one of the things you get with being a YouTube member, as you saw, let's put Lance back up there. He was the first to join today. You got this nice little emblem next to your name that we can see that you are a member. And so we will see you in chat. We will see you on comments on the YouTube channel, and it makes it more likely that we're going to see that and comment and reply and all those kinds of things. So really appreciate that. Hope you do too. You also get access to some fun stuff, Jeff. We've got some custom emojis. There's a Evan wearing a Spider-Man mask. You've got John Schneider's championship belt. I think you got me with a bag on my head. So you got a few emojis. We'll add more as we go along. And then if you're a suite level member, you also are going to get access to things like private AMA kind of style meetups that we'll do over time, which would be great. And so there's a lot of things that are specific to YouTube that you get, but being a YouTube member, it's a great time to join. And we are, I think, like one subscriber away from 9,500. We've been growing a ton there. 501 away from 10,000. Would love to get to 10,000 subscribers. So please click subscribe and click like on the show. And finally, I'll just say patreon.com/HawkBlogger. We've been getting a bunch of new folks joining there. And that gets you access to the Slack channel where lots of conversations are going on about the draft and about the Mariners and about all sorts of things. And you get all the audio versions of this podcast. Jeff, I think you were saying as we were getting on the show, you've been listening to the show as you've been driving around. So for people that want that audio version where the quality is good, you don't have to have YouTube on and draining your phone and all that other stuff. You got to be a patron member, patreon.com/HawkBlogger. Okay. So one last thing. Let's say hello to YouTube member Maddie B. Hello to you. Bradley says, another YouTube member, thank you for all the great content over the years. Been listening to y'all for a long time. Absolutely. Thank you, Bradley. And folks are getting into the custom emojis in chat as well. All right. So Jeff, one thing before we get into this mock drafting, got another new member, Plenipote. Look at that. Even 5. Let's see if we can get to double digits in one show. That'd be great. So welcome to the show as a new member. I will tell you something that's affected me on defense lately for the Seahawks. It's not enough to totally change my strategy, but you know how much I've talked about Byron Murphy. You know how much I've talked about Michael Hall Jr. Like, these are two of my favorite prospects in the draft. I see them primarily as 3 technique defensive tackles. I also see Leonard Williams, the best player on the defensive line and the only one signed for 3 more years, as primarily a 3-tech defensive tackle. He can play anywhere along the line, but I think that's his best spot. And so I'm starting to wonder if that truly is the best place to go. If they were to have a Byron Murphy, is he just rotating at 3-tech? People say he can play nose tackle, but I don't think that's the best use of his talents. And so for me, what that means is Tavondre Sweat still is the guy that I think potentially has the best impact early on and the best fit for what the Seahawks need from the defensive line perspective. And I think that's a challenge because I'm not sure the Seahawks are going to spend a pick early enough in the second round to get him. And I don't know if he falls far enough to where the Seahawks could. And I'm also not sure John Schneider would spend a high pick on a interior defensive lineman that's a nose tackle. He's never done that before, and I'm not sure he would now.
Yeah, it's Mike McDonald in Baltimore. They've done the same sort of thing where they found a lot of defensive tackles later in the draft, or they found the value signing. And even Justin Madubuike, who was one of their success stories in Baltimore, I think he was a 3rd-round pick in 2020. So they haven't spent those high picks on defensive tackles, really dating back to like this was way before even it might have even predated John Harbaugh, but it was Peloti Nada was like that unicorn kind of player who just changed their defense. But they found those value players in the 2nd and 3rd round players, and they've been looking at like if you look at some of their 30 visits, they've been looking at like the bigger nose tackle types who are more day 3 picks, which is kind of lines with how Baltimore is drafted, even how Seattle's drafted. So Sweat is just like his body type, his fit, and just counteracting what they have already is really a perfect fit. I think the problem with them is they probably A, don't want to show interest, and B, based on their picks right now, they don't have a spot for him. So I think if they can redo their picks, move down, get a second, he is just a perfect fit for how Mike McDonald wants to play, what Seattle needs on their roster, and they could use another penetrator. Williams is one of those all around. He's really good at everything, but he's not great, I don't think, at anything. So that's where Murphy fits really, really well, because his disruption with Williams would be like potentially a dom, like what Sue and Vea were. But man, Sweat is, I agree with you. Like Sweat is a perfect fit for what they need on this team.
Yeah, I think Sweat could be the Dexter Lawrence to Williams, in New York. Someone who's demanding the double teams and occupying blockers. And I don't think you get more of a run wall than, Devondre Sweat is essentially a run wall, a one-man run
in
wall.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So let's get into this and do our first pass through this defense only mock. Let me put us in mode where we can see this screen, and we're going to start with the PFF mock draft simulator, because at this point it probably doesn't matter that much which simulator we use for defense only, and we haven't done this one for a while, so I'm just kind of curious if something's changed. We'll always be able to go back to the Pro Football Network one, which probably for our money has been the most accurate or seeming most realistic. So, Jeff, everyone else is going to be drafting every other position. You and I are going to be drafting defense only. So the Seahawks are going to be a little bit limited.
And are we doing trades in this?
We'll do it. Yeah, we could do everything else normal.
Yeah.
But we're going to try to pick, although we're not going to try. We are only going to pick players that we think are defensive players on this draft. So the Seahawks are up. We don't have to talk about any of these offensive names, but you got some
plays very favorably here.
Yeah, right. You've got, by the way, in that Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks defense only draft, Bucky Brooks, number 1 overall pick, Leatu Latu. So he's a guy that might be the best defensive player in this draft, according to some folks. And he's not what I want for the Seahawks. I think he's not the type of edge that I want, but I understand why people are excited. His numbers are pretty undeniable. Are you thinking of sticking and picking here? Because you got Jared Verse, you got Byron Murphy, you got Johnny Newton, got Cooper DeJean, whatever you want to call him. Any of these guys that you're like, hey, stick and pick, or are you trying to trade back here? I'm gonna let you think about that.
Scroll down a little bit.
I will. Let's welcome David Crockett, a longtime supporter of the show. Loved having David as a YouTube member. Welcome. You two can join. The link to join as a YouTube member is in the chat, and it's also in the description of the video. All right, let me scroll down for you a bit.
Because
let's just do this. Let's just do filter positions. Oh, it won't let me just do defense.
Oh, the other site does that. Okay.
Yeah.
This is where it gets tricky, because unless you're comfortable with like Chop Robinson or Darius Robinson, trading down you can't go too far. Let's try a trade down. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what trade downs are. They basically switched this, so now we can trade down to any pick, and then we'll just see what what they offer. What how far do you want to go?
So let's try either Miami, Philly, or Green Bay.
Yeah, Miami is where my mind went immediately. So let's go
Okay.
21.55 for 16. That seems like a fair trade.
Yeah.
Not accepted. Let's go. Let's go. We'll give him. We'll just for the purposes of this thing, we'll give him a fourth round pick next year as well. There.
Okay.
Fine.
So let's see if all of our guys go here.
A lot of them went. Jared Verse
Ooh.
gone. Byron Murphy gone.
Ooh.
Okay. Look at Graham Barton climbing the boards here.
Ooh. See, in a normal draft, I'd be pretty interested, but in this, you're now stuck with one of those top three. I don't know if there's another.
What are you thinking about here from a defense side? Like you've lost. I mean, Johnny Newton is the guy that most people would be like, oh my God, you got to take him. Rob Rang yesterday was singing the praises of Cooper DeJean.
I can't.
You can't do that. There's, I think Daniel Jeremiah said Tyler Nubin is the consensus top safety. You could go Peyton Wilson here. I actually don't think that's the worst call. I think he's the only Pro Bowl potential linebacker, but he's got huge injury issues. So I think he's a first round talent.
Where do they have Sweat here?
Sweat is well down the board for them. They have him like 70 something.
Yeah, this was where like in a real scenario, I'd consider trading down and trying to get Sweat again.
Yeah, he's 74.
So we can get him. So I don't know if I want to take Johnny Newton here.
Well, we have 55, so we'll probably be able to get Sweat later on.
And then linebacker 55-81.
We should be able to get a potentially. We could Edge Cooper is an option. That's someone who. That's someone who, yeah, Rob Rang was a pretty big fan of. Javon Bullard is a guy that a lot of folks really like at safety.
See, this is so tricky because in a normal draft, I'd be pretty thrilled with this scenario. There'd be so many options on the board here. In this draft, it's like maybe we should have just taken Byron Murphy or Verse and called it a day. But let's see what happens. Let's take Latu here. I've been against it. Yeah, I've been against Latu. I think we can pair Latu with another defensive tackle rather than just taking Newton here.
Okay. I'm on record of being against this pick, but I'm going to support it.
Me too. We're going to have to do another one.
If it was up, if I was doing this, and we'll do a few of these, I would probably go safety first here.
So you would take DeJean.
I would take DeJean. Yeah, I think I would take DeJean. So let's take Latu.
It's funny because I'm very against it. It's just I think we can create.
So now we're here, and we should be able to get Edge Cooper. We should be able to get Sweat. I mean, I think we take Sweat here, right?
I think we take. Well, that was my thinking.
I mean, Dorless is another option, but I think
I
think we take Sweat here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna take Sweat here. I mean, technically, we could try to trade back again, but let's just play it straight. So now we get to the third round pick.
Ooh, we're just scrolling
and we're starting to all these players. So Cam Kitchens is a safety option. Jeremiah Trotter. I'm just not into Jeremiah Trotter.
It's too small.
Got all these names. It's just so crazy. It's
rough.
So Maris.
Michael Hall.
What's that?
Michael Hall Jr.
Where? Oh, well, all the way down here. That's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous.
Fine. Well, let's do it. I mean,
let's take it.
Let's do it. I mean, we're in this to kind of
front seven looks a lot better.
Right. Like, let's just see how that feels after we're done with all this. So Sione Vaki
works here. Yeah.
This is a guy do you know how deep into this I am, Jeff? You want to know how deep? I listened to a Utah Utes football podcast yesterday about their draft prospects because I found myself looking at Cole Bishop, Sione Vaki, their guard, their tackle that would probably be a guard. And I was like, I want to know what these guys think. And it's interesting, and they had a PFF guy on there as well, and they were going back and forth about Vaki. Like, is he a running back? Is he a safety? He's really a box safety, and that's where he wants to play. He's definitely not a guy that you can really like leave in. But the interesting thing with Vaki is he also could be a returner. He's like the guy that could play running back and be part of that new return style. He's increasingly interesting to me. I don't know if I'm interested in Vaki in round 4,
Yeah,
but maybe a little bit
I think we got him.
later.
I think with Griff, I think we took him in 6.
Yeah, let's see.
Is
Is Cole
Mustafa
Bishop?
there?
Cole Bishop's
Cole
still here. I
Bishop.
actually would take Cole Bishop over Vaki. It's interesting
Me
that
too.
Vaki's leaped
I
him.
like Mustafa over Vaki too.
Yeah, Mustafa. I think you're right. Both of those guys are more appealing to me.
So
We
here's the
pick
question.
again at 118, so I
That
think we
was
could
my question.
probably
I think we can
risk
wait.
it.
So what do we need? We've got 2 defensive tackles, an edge. We need a linebacker.
Linebacker, Michael Barrett, we also look like we could wait on. Him or Cedric Gray are both interesting to me.
Yeah. Griff was really high on Michael Barrett.
Yes.
Trevin Wallace, some people like.
Yep, that's right. I think maybe that was Rob might have mentioned
I think
him.
Rob really liked Trevin
And I
Wallace.
think isn't he a 30 visit for us?
He is.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Okay. So that's linebacker. What about
we hit edge? We don't need an edge now.
Oh, actually, this is what we can do. So we can just select all, and I'm gonna put cornerback on there.
I don't know what comes out there, but so I think it's either safety or linebacker with these next 2 picks.
I have not looked at any of the corners.
Me either.
It's a super strong class. I don't. Here's. Can I make a quick case for corner?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I want to see if this works even in my own brain. Trey Brown he's in his last year, yeah.
2021, 2, 3. Yeah,
I think he's in the last year of his deal. You just got Witherspoon and Woolen on their rookie contracts, so you're good with those 2. Then you've got Artie Burns, who's a veteran 1-year deal guy. You've got Kobe Bryant, who I think has more potential safety than he does at corner. So you're about to be down to just 2 corners, and we don't even know for sure that Woolen is the right fit for how Mike McDonald wants to play the position. Mm-hmm. And it's a super valuable position. So if you've got a really strong corner draft, is it that much different than receiver, where the Seahawks have Tyler Lockett in his last year, and we're saying, hey, you should take a receiver? Shouldn't they maybe be thinking about replacing Trey Brown? Although the reason I feel like it's a little different is Trey Brown could be re-signed, and I think he could potentially be re-signed at a reasonable rate where he could be part of your future. That's where it's a little different.
No, I think it's long-term planning, and it's an area they've struggled with historically, where they're not drafting. What Baltimore does really, really well, and something I wish Seattle did better, is they're always drafting a year out. Like last year, they took Trenton Simpson, a guy we really liked, in the 3rd round. They took him as knowing that Patrick Queen was going to be a free agent, and they just paid Roquan Smith. So last year, they took Andrew Voorhees, a guard, a guy you really liked, who was an injured guard, knowing that Zeitler was a free agent. I don't know if they knew John Simpson would be able to start for them, but Voorhees now slides into their starting guard. They don't have to go in free agency and spend. So this is what Seattle needs to get a little better at. They're so focused on like what Rob said last year. They're always trying to build like the most balanced roster, and they kind of lose this a lot. Like tight end last year, they had all their guys with no future really locked in, and linebacker. They didn't really hit any of those spots, and this is where I think Schneider could learn something from what Baltimore does really well. I get the sense that Schneider's not going to make a lot of adjustments based on how he talks. He seems very confident in himself. People have mentioned ego. People have mentioned things. I wish they would study what Eric DaCosta and Ozzie Newsome do in Baltimore, because so I see corner. I see him right there. I just don't know if, like this guy, it says here he's small. They're already
164 pounds. I don't think.
Yeah, they already have Witherspoon and Brown.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, agreed.
I think
agreed.
I think I would go. We already have Latu, right?
We do. I'm just kind of familiarizing myself because I have not looked at some of these positions in more detail.
Yeah,
Javon Solomon's a guy that a lot of people had good thoughts. I think this maybe had an injury.
Yeah.
Small. Yeah,
Thanks.
as far as some of the stats here, though, I mean, nice, decent pass rush
Metrics
win
are really
rate.
strong. But I think safety I'd be comfortable hitting here.
So, what
We
are we
should take
thinking?
Cole Bishop because one of our usual listeners, Michael Thompson, wrote to us today a mock draft where they took Latu and Bishop. And I was like, I would hate that draft. And I crushed him. And now I think we should take both of them.
I really like Bishop. And interestingly, what I was hearing on the Utes podcast that I was listening to is that Bishop was asked to play free safety, but he's just not. And he did not do agility tests, at the combine. So he opted out of that, which I think further indicates maybe not a sideline to sideline guy. But people have talked about him. And this is one of the Utes thing. Well, actually, maybe it was a PFF guy. I can't remember where I heard this. As a nickel backer, as essentially a guy that can play linebacker for you as a coverage safety. And so the kind of hybrid nature that Cole Bishop provides, I think, is pretty interesting for the Seahawks. I can't remember how old he is.
Okay, but I want you to do one thing because I just did it.
What's that?
Google image Cole Bishop.
I've done this.
Evan Hill would not be happy. Cashman, that first picture that comes up right in the bottom there.
This one?
No, I was thinking the one right under there.
This one. Yeah. Yeah, I think Evan wouldn't love that.
The red cheeks. But I think this would be a really good pick.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's take Cole Bishop.
Because you were talking about something the other day that really irks me about John Schneider. And the thing with shelves and how he's so focused on what's left in the draft rather than getting the quality. And I think if I was a GM, I would tier players, I would tier positions. But if there's say a lot of safeties like we're here, are you going to be mad because you could have got a safety later or that you got the best safety? If you get if you get the best player at as many positions as you can, that's how you're going to be a good team. If you're always trying to balance out the draft, and I think that's what's happened with this Seahawks roster. They're really well balanced across the board other than guard, but they don't have enough quality. And my view is get as much quality as possible and figure out the rest later.
Well, I agree with you on that. And part of the reason I'm interested a little bit in the Cole Bishop, Malik Mustafa types is if these guys are able, if they're strong enough and big enough hitters that they can play a little bit of linebacker, a little bit of that style of safety, then they can potentially fill what is a thin linebacker gap as well and allow you to play some different defenses that maybe feature more 3 safety looks, fewer linebackers less often, or even fill in in a nickel situation as a linebacker. In this case, we have not technically drafted a linebacker yet. The guy that's most appealing to me here would be Cedric Gray or Michael Barrett.
Yeah.
But as far as best player, Jeff, Cam Hart's a guy that's come up quite a bit, and I at least want to give him a look here. 6'2", 207.
Yeah, he's a little bigger, so I like that.
Bigger guy. But I think the guy that really jumps out, or a couple guys that jump out to me. So we already got Devondre Sweat. It does not make sense to take McKinley Jackson as well. This guy is another nose tackle that had a very high run stop rate in college. Let's see what he had last year. It's not great with this number, but has had a pretty solid career stopping the run. Another guy that I like quite a bit is Christian Boyd. Another big guy, a little bit better run stop win rate, but also has a decent pass rush win rate. Granted, this is different level of competition. But the other one that we just haven't spent as much time on, and I want to go deeper in another show, is Mason Smith.
Yeah.
There's some folks projecting him as a second rounder now. This is a guy that was a huge recruit coming out, had a good freshman year, and then got injured. and then really came on the last few games of this past season. And so people are kind of betting on the revival here and the ability for him to grow. This might be the best guy you could draft at this point, even if you've already drafted 2 interior defensive linemen.
Yeah, and funny enough, Daniel Jeremiah was hyping him up in February at the Combine, and he said the player he reminds him of is like a less refined Leonard Williams. And so I know some people got upset by that. They're like, this guy was a mess in college. Leonard Williams was a top 5 pick. What are you talking about? But just in terms of like roster mirroring, in a different draft, we would look at a Boyd or Mason Smith, but we got Sweat and Michael Hall already. So I would probably either look at the corner, or I think we'd have to take one of the 2 linebackers here. I think it would have to be Barrett or Gray.
Our next pick is 179. I think you're right. I think we might need to push up linebacker. The chances that Barrett would still be around, I don't know though, man. Or Gray, I guess is
Gray is good value, I think, here, but we can roll the dice and see that one makes it through.
What would be
like Cam Hart would be an interesting pick. I could double up at safety.
Yeah, what's anyone else that kind of catches your eye that you've been curious about? Like, I don't know much about Tyreek Smith.
Yeah, we've done some shows. We looked at him a little bit. He seems like a try-hard player that doesn't have a lot of traits, and that's not really the Schneider style in the 4th round. They kind of go the other way. They typically draft on traits.
Yeah, 5'10". That's a small dude. All right. What about, we already got an edge. I don't know anything about this guy.
No, I think where our numbers are like I'd be okay not taking. I think only one. There's only room for one edge, in my opinion.
Yep. Okay. So you make the call, Jeff. I think if it was up to me, I would take Mason Smith here. As crazy as that is.
All right, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's roll the dice. We're loaded at D tackle. We're taking 3 D tackles.
It makes there's a lot of reasons this wouldn't happen, but as far as value, I think he's the best player with the best potential return.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it.
All right, so we're gonna do that.
We got this guy.
We will potentially very likely regret it, but let's see what happens here. Let's look at because we're taking all these defensive players, all these good offensive players are slipping down the board. It's funny. Edge, and let's look at linebacker. Okay.
Yeah, we missed all the linebackers. We probably shouldn't take a linebacker there.
Yeah. Well, there's Brennan Jackson is a good player there. Another edge. Yeah. I know you're not interested. Jalen Ford.
Yeah.
Could be an option. Yeah. Could take Dominic Hampton, another safety.
I know Rob has him as a 4th round player.
Mm-hmm.
Trevin Wallace is still there too.
Trevin Wallace is there. Yeah. So what do we do here, Jeff?
I think we have to take a look.
Ryan Watts. Did I hear? No, that's Jalen Watts.
Yeah. It's Jalen Watts, yeah. I think we got to take one of the linebackers.
All right. We're not taking Steel Chambers. I refuse.
No.
He's just
I think Jalen Ford or...
Okay. Let's do Jalen Ford.
Yeah, let's do Jalen Ford. We can even double up at 192 if we want. Oh, Tip Ryman.
I know.
Man, this is...
I think one of the things I do appreciate about the PFF draft simulators, there's just because, I've logged in here. There's no ads. It's just a nice.
Yeah, it's smooth.
So I think either Jalen Green or Brennan Jackson are your best values here.
Yeah, and that's the kind of player they typically take at this spot. I think
Dominic Hampton.
But I think we can get him I think we can get him at 235. Yeah. Ooh, actually, maybe not.
It's close. Well, tell me. I think
Brennan Jackson's the way to go here.
I think you're right. Let's take Brennan Jackson. I'm just really curious. The whole point of this is to load up completely on one side of the ball.
Dominic Hampton, yeah. Yep,
Hampton's gone. just say IOL? No, not interior offensive
Stop trying to do that.
line. You've done very well, Jeff. I know this is going to be hard for you.
Here's the thing about the guards is after like round 4, it falls off a cliff.
Yes.
So
Nathaniel Watson. Ufalo. Oh, we should take
Ufolocio. Let's do it.
I don't think he'll be here, but they don't like him in this. So, all right.
So this is going to look very different than what I thought a draft would look. But it wasn't as hard as I thought it'd be. So your 2 favorite picks, Brian, got D's. My least favorite pick
They've
on
got
A+.
this new mock draft assistant.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Jermaine Burton? I don't get it. We got all basically D's and C's in the middle. I got a B+.
Well, they like our Latu pick.
It's funny. That's my least favorite pick. And then 55, 81, and 102 are very good picks. And they crushed us.
So what would you... I mean, let's think about this for a second. Let's think about how the Seahawks roster would look after doing this. So where does Latu fit? He immediately comes in and does he take Maffe's snaps? Does he take
I think he would
Nwosu snaps?
I think he would be more of the third down edge rusher to pair with, I think, Maffe.
Yeah, I don't even know if he's a starter.
No, that's where I have so much trouble picking him. And I didn't like what was on the board for us, but I knew the reason I ended up pushing for him is I knew we'd get defensive interior players. And look, we ended up with Sweat, Hall, and Mason Smith, who it's like if we took Johnny Newton in the first round, I don't know if so we could have really. He's not even a starter. That's where I'm out on edge early. I don't think it's a good use of resources.
Yeah, and even as much as I'm a Jared Verse guy, where would Jared Verse slot in? He's not really an outside linebacker.
No, he's more of a 4-down front power player.
He's a 4-3 defensive end.
Mike McDonald does run a lot of mixed and varied fronts, but like you look at who they had in Baltimore, I don't know if he's the best fit. And again, you're getting a part-time player at the expense of a full-time starter. But like when you look at those top 3 picks, like your front 7, if Latu hits, your front 7 is remarkably better. But I'll be honest, I'm out on Latu. Like I have concerns about whether he translates with, like, he doesn't have the athletic profile I typically look for in the first round. He's really strong technically. I know like Danny Kelly and Mina, they're really high on him, but I'd be thrilled with like every other pick other than that top pick. Everything different down there looks really good, but the pick that they love is the pick I like the least.
Yeah, well, so I mean, let's kind of go through this really one by one. So Latu, we've got some questions about. We just covered that. Sweat fits right in. I mean, he immediately, I wouldn't be surprised if he is the starter at nose tackle. Now, they probably would give Jaron Reed that as a veteran, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is a heavily utilized player from day one.
And the thing with Sweat is some of the questions about are his like commitment to his fitness and like how much does he love football? And he had a great Senior Bowl. He's had a great process. Jaron Reed, the thing he's known for is like locker room leadership, culture. Like I think that would actually be a really, really good guy for him to be around. And they can split time earlier, but I think Sweat's just physical stature is so unique. And you saw what Michael Pierce did in Baltimore. I think if Sweat is like, if he's able to play at the pro level, that's your starting nose tackle from day one, and it makes your team a lot more unique.
I think Sweat is one of the players at any position in this draft that has the biggest potential to add wins to the Seahawks immediately.
Yeah.
I just think he does things that nobody else can do for them and changes the dynamics of that whole defensive line. Similar to the way we've talked about interior offensive line. You know, you put Fautanu in there or Barton as a really good guard that can have a massive ripple effect. So I just think Sweat is a very unique fit and get. Michael Hall Jr., this is where this would be ideal. I don't think it's realistic at all, but Michael Hall Jr. at this point means that he can sit behind Leonard Williams. He can develop. He can be rotational. They can be rotational 3 techs. He does not have to step in and be the guy right away. If you took a Byron Murphy or even a Johnny Newton, then I think you're having a little bit more of a challenge there of feeling like you're really robbing him of development by not having him on the field more. I think Hall's a guy that could develop. He's 20 years old, man. So giving him some time to develop behind Williams and learn from him, I think is great. So I don't hate that at all. Then Cole Bishop, we talked about a fair amount, so we don't have to go deep here. I think Cole Bishop, he would be competition for Kobe Bryant, I believe, and maybe Kayvon Wallace, from a safety spot. Don't hate that. Mason Smith, purely developmental, right? Like he ends up being like the Miles Adams that they got now, who's been around for a while, doesn't really get a lot of snaps, but he gets a decent amount of snaps, but he's not, I don't know that there's a lot more upside for Miles Adams. I wouldn't mind having Mason Smith and instead like upgrade, like think about the 49ers, think about, the Bills and some of these teams have had some really good defensive line depth over the years. And when someone gets injured, they've got another guy that just rolls in there. Having Mason Smith there, I don't think it's as crazy. If he pushes Miles Adams off the roster, are we really upset about that? If he pushes, I mean, if I don't think Jonathan Hankins gets pushed off the roster with any of these, but he could. Sweat could push Hankins off the roster potentially.
Yeah, and it also gives you a package to have both of them on the field and run stopping situations. And guys like, and the question here is like maybe you can trade Draymond Jones before the season. Maybe like Michael Hall and Draymond Jones are a pretty natural roster mirroring situation. I think he's got like 10 pounds on him, but it gives you really. And again, Mason Smith, it takes Miles Adams' roster spot. That's a huge win. That's exactly what you're looking to do in the draft. Those depth upgrades where you just have talent. Miles Adams is an undrafted free agent. That definitely upgrades your team and upgrades your depth. They'd be loaded at D tackle. They would have.
Yeah, is that the worst thing, man? I don't know. I guess no. I'm not thinking like when we were doing it, it felt very gluttonous to add another DT. I don't hate it. Jalen Ford, I think we both feel like not a starting linebacker most likely, but could add some depth as a nickel backer. Brennan Jackson is just, I think, a good value pick there. We did get an edge. He, to me, still feels like more of a 4-3 end. And so I'm not sure, as much as I think he's a good player, I'm not sure he's a good fit for what the Seahawks are going to. I don't know if he's going to be dropping into coverage anytime soon or, playing the flat. So
yeah, it kind of feels like Jacob Martin was when he was on Seattle. The same range in the draft, 6th round. I don't see Jacob Martin fitting with Baltimore's defense.
I think that's a good comp. Ulofoshio, I think there's no way he's going to be there in the 7th from my perspective. He's a little bit of an older prospect, so who knows? Maybe he's a good, solid backup linebacker. I think that's fine. How do you feel about this, Jeff? If they just ignored offense, they ignored offensive line, and so now like this means that Greg Van Roten or whoever they bring in to be your guard is your guard. Anthony Bradford, Akram's your only backup with McClendon Curtis or whoever it ends up being. How much do you think this would improve the Seahawks if this was their draft?
Obviously, a lot would come down to Latu. Latu needs to be a special pass rusher to make this whole thing work. But I talk about building positions of strength. I think that's so important. And if you could add Sweat, Hall, and Mason Smith to that tackle group with Leonard Williams and some of the one-year pieces they have there, to me, that makes the team so much better than trying to have this balanced roster that's pretty good at everything. And so I don't think they would take 3 defensive tackles in the first 4 rounds. I think that's pretty unreasonable. But the all defensive strategy, it wasn't nearly as hard as I was expecting. It would be hard for just the first round, and that's where it's the one part of the draft I don't like. But you see where the depth is on defense in this draft. It's the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. And that 4th round is a really good spot for safety. It's a really good spot. So we could have doubled up on safety. We could have gone Bishop and Mustafa if the draft fell a little differently. So there's a lot of potential there, but I still don't feel great about Latu. But again, that defensive tackle group, there aren't many things that can make me come out of this draft thrilled. that part of the draft would make me as happy as you could be with that defensive tackle group.
Yeah, I'm with you there. We're gonna do one more if you don't mind. We'll do
No,
it
we need to try.
on.
I don't want our only draft to have Latu as our.
We'll do one
I
more.
don't even like Latu. I don't even want him, but
We're gonna do one more. And we're gonna do it as on the Pro Football Network sim. But I'm trying to make sure I can delete the ads before I show my screen again, so people don't have to watch me struggle to do that. Let's see if I can do this. So it's not working. We may just have to deal with the ads. They might be getting smarter than me. Who now, if you could do it over again, which of those picks do you think you would change? Which one did you feel the most regret over?
Latu.
Latu.
But the problem with Latu is the other picks were Cooper DeJean and Newton. And I would much rather, and I know you tweeted this morning, I'd much rather take a different position first and take the defensive tackles we got rather than taking Newton first and something else early. So I was kind of stuck, and I wonder, like, it would have been better off if we just took Byron Murphy at 16 and that took like Sweat in the third round or two. But I don't know if we actually do that. But really, it was Latu. That was the one I was least comfortable about. I don't even like him that much as a player.
Yep. I think that's the thing for me. I'm not sold on him being a fit for what the Seahawks need or being the right player.
So Brian, aside on defense, did you just see what Albert Breer just put out?
No.
You should pull up his tweet. I think that's gonna get you a little.
Uh-oh. All right, let me pull up his tweet. I think I just got it so that we don't have ads on that simulator.
All right.
Let me pull up Albert Breer. I'm gonna get live reaction to whatever this is.
This will get you excited, but
I'll share my screen so people. Well, let me get some of this stuff out of the way. There we go. One interesting thing I've picked up in making calls this week, coaches seem to be higher than scouts on Michael Penix Jr. in general. Some have him ahead of the presumed top guys, excluding Caleb Williams. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, like you've been saying it the whole time.
There's just no way.
Yeah.
There is no way that you watch all of his film from the last 2 years and you watch the other guys and you say, yeah, he's not a first round QB. Like, there's just no way. I never have believed it.
I'm right in line with what you've been saying the whole time.
I certainly think Caleb Williams is a better prospect. So I know that, I get that. It also wouldn't shock me if Caleb Williams ends up being a guy that never fully realizes his potential and is never the guy that leads you to a Super Bowl. And it does a lot of spectacular plays, but can't make the key play in the key moment. And so I'm not a Caleb Williams hater, but I have real questions when I've watched him play. He has trouble playing within the framework of an offense. And in the NFL, no matter how good of an improviser you can be, they show all of Patrick Mahomes' off script throws, but ultimately he plays within the framework of the offense 98% of the time. And then he's able to create when he has to. So anyway, I'm not surprised.
Told you that it's not you.
All right. So let's do this.
Oh, no.
What's that?
Not Lazio at the top.
No. So, okay, yeah, we could just do defense nicely here. That's nice. So here we are at 16. Do we want to try trading back again?
See, here's the problem. If you don't get Byron Murphy, it's a very different looking draft. If the offensive guys are on the board, oh man, I'd be swearing this out.
I'm going to assert myself here a little differently for you.
Let's do it.
I'm going to do something. I'm going to do a couple things here. We're going to look at trade offers. So we're being offered 25 and 41. I am taking that.
That's a sweet trade.
I'm taking that. I'm not even looking. Let's just see what the
And
other offer
102,
is.
yeah.
37. No, I'm taking because let me show you what happens here. We're going to take this
Who are they
offer.
taking? Fautanu?
Oh, wait, what was that offer? 27. No,
That's a horrible offer.
that's a stupid offer. Okay. We are going to take, we're not going to take Byron Murphy.
Oh, we're taking Cooper DeJean
We're going to take Super DeJean.
over
Okay. I'm
Chop
going to
Rock
make
too,
you,
yeah.
I'm going to make you deal with this reality.
It's
I'm going to make you
possible.
deal with this reality. And let's see what happens if we can get Sweat.
Okay. Oh, yeah, because we have 41.
Yes.
Johnny Noonan's still there? No way. We're not taking
Johnny Newton's still there. We're not going to take him. We're not going to take Darius Robinson. We're going to take Tavondre Sweat.
Okay.
Okay. So the reason I wanted to do this is because I wanted to contrast it with our last one where we went big. So now we've gone safety. And I think potentially one of the guys who could also play corner, by the way. And what do we say? Corner is kind of a need for the Seahawks going into next year, potentially.
For the record, Brian forced me to do this.
Yes, I did force you to do this, but we were going to do it. So Tavondre Sweat is now going to be a Seahawk. So you're still addressing an immediate starter. I think both of these guys can immediately play for you. Now we're down into pick 81. We're going to just look at defense. You could go Chris Jenkins.
Yeah,
you could go Cole Bishop.
I don't think you can take two safeties to start.
I think Mike Sainistril is a tough pick not to make here. You could go Mason Smith, Jaden Hicks. That's the linebackers are thin already.
Yeah.
Linebackers went.
Yeah. So they have Trevin Wallace at 84. They had him at 200s on the other mock.
Yeah.
No, I think you got to create strength here. So I think you either double up on D tackle, or do you take Mikey Strainstrill and have a totally different looking draft?
That would be really different. I don't know much about Marshawn Nealand. I've heard of him. Someone was really like hyping him up.
He's a bigger edge, yeah.
I
just struggle where the body's like where are you giving him snaps?
I think he becomes a competition with Derek Hall. I mean, he's a Derek Hall kind of guy. Javon Bullard, a guy we did not take last time. Now you just took. He's a little bit on the smaller side.
Yeah, I don't know if I could take two safeties in my first three picks. Finley Jackson would be an interesting name, but
you just got Tavondre Sweat. So I don't think it makes sense to double that up. I think it would be, if you're going to go defensive tackle, it'd be Jenkins, or it would be
linebacker. Okay.
Mason Smith.
Yeah. I don't like that 81.
Yeah. So, and by the way, our next pick is
118. We gave up 102.
Next pick is 118. So we got a little bit of a gap here. Chris Jenkins is the best player here, isn't he?
I would probably want Chris Jenkins.
I think you got to take Chris Jenkins.
Sainstrill and Witherspoon are kind of redundant.
Yeah, done. Chris Jenkins is a Seahawk. I really like that kid.
Yeah, we were high on him early in the process. He just kind of slipped out of there.
I think he's just more of a defensive end in their defense. Like, he's a 300-pounder. He's not a bigger dude. I don't think he's enough of a mover to be a 3-tech in the way you want.
Ooh, Mustafa.
So you got Jalen for Mustafa's a great pick. I wouldn't mind that here.
Yeah, if you get, and Mustafa counteracts what DeJean does really, really well.
I mean, if they could end up being your starting safeties in a few years.
Yeah.
I mean, did you just get your Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor duo? Like, not that they're going to be Hall of Famers, but
especially if you have them at that salary.
Done.
You don't have to pay Jordan Love. You're probably not extending Jordan Love now.
All right. Whoa, that's a long wait. Okay.
Christian Boyd, no, you're ready to double up there.
Now Maris Lafau is a guy that I really have. He has actually showed up pretty well from a linebacker perspective in some coverage pieces. Is a little bit someone I wanted to look a little more. You got Ulafoshio.
Let's take Maris Lafau.
Let's do it. I mean, Christian Boyd's another guy, but we already doubled up.
We have no linebackers.
Let's take Marist. We're already back up. I mean, Christian Boyd's hard to ignore. You could double up with Ulofoshio. Your next pick's at 235.
Yeah, I think it's got to be one of those guys.
I don't think any of these other guys really.
No.
Well, you know what's crazy in this one is I'm going to scroll all the way down. Michael Barrett's going to be down here.
Oh yeah, like 590.
There's no way. I don't know why they've got.
I saw
him.
like Field Yates had him as like his favorite value pick in the draft too the other day.
I don't know why he's so.
I don't think he's going 6th round.
I don't think it's fair to pick him either. So
no.
There's Grayson Murphy way down here too.
Yeah, but did we
They've
just take an edge?
Just way down here.
Did we take an edge yet?
We did not. Did not take an edge yet. I mean, Christian Boyd's the most interesting.
Yeah, I think Christian Boyd would be hard to pass at this spot.
Do you think you do that over Ulofoshio?
I think so.
Okay, done. We're getting another big boy.
We got 3
this
DTs.
Is Evans thick boy summer.
Yeah, Mike McDonald, Evan.
All right, we're in our final pick here.
This is where you could take an edge. Gabe Murphy.
I think you get Gabe Murphy.
Nathaniel Watson, maybe.
Yeah, Nathaniel Watson's an interesting name. I wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah, let's go with that. Unless you want Michael Barrett, that's cheating.
That's cheating, right? I want to try to keep it somewhat in the realm of.
Let's see why we came out this time.
All right, Jeff. So I made you do it. That's on record. How do you feel about this draft?
It's really solid. It's the same thing. I feel like we're missing the front man. I think we have the middle of this draft is amazing. I love 41. I love 81. I love 118. Cooper DeJean has to be like Eric Weddle to hit for this draft to work. And I love the middle of this draft. And it's where we've been stuck. And it's why these defensive only drafts are so hard. We're missing that blue chip front man. So we need one of DeJean or Sweat to become all pro for me to love this draft. This looks like a Baltimore draft. I'll be honest. This looks like a Baltimore draft. Sweat, DeJean, those are just football players. Chris Jenkins, Mustafa, like Boyd, Nathaniel Watson's who had the green dot. I remember Rob Stud. So there's a lot of good players here. I do think that we have that stud. But man, I love how they do this, the roster. We're really made safety and D tackle a strength potentially.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about Cooper DeJean and whether he's really worthy of this level. And I think that one of the things has been consistent, hearing it from Griff and hearing it from Rob Rang and others, is unless you're a pro scout, you don't have access to film to judge secondary players in college. You just don't. You're depending on broadcast film to judge players, and most of the time you cannot see what's happening with cornerbacks and especially with safeties. And so all these folks that are telling you about safety and corner that are doing it as a hobby don't really have access to enough film to really judge these guys. Rob Rang is someone who does, and is someone who's really high on Cooper DeJean and thinks he's got a lot of potential. There's other people that do have access to the film that are high on him. So let's say for a second he is, he's of the Eric Weddle kind of variety of safety. And if Malik Mustafa is that just smash mouth safety that you compare next to him, and you got them in the 1st and the 4th round, I think that really sets you up to say, well, Julian Love can work out, Rayshawn Jenkins can or can't work out, Kayvon Wallace, and we don't have to feel attached to any of those guys, but we could keep them around. Like Julian Love's 25, he's not old, and you could potentially keep him around and be part of a trio there. And then you've got T'Vondre Sweat, who we've already talked about, so we don't have to keep talking about. I think he's just a huge addition, figuratively and literally. And Chris Jenkins, we have not picked more recently. I think who did we have in the last draft? Let me see.
Michael Hall.
Yep. Yeah, we had Michael Hall. So I certainly like Michael Hall a lot better as a prospect upside wise. I think Chris Jenkins' floor is a lot higher than Michael Hall's.
Yeah.
He's going to be a good player in the NFL. He's going to contribute in the NFL. He just might be more like a Jaron Reed level versus, a Michael Bennett level kind of impact.
That's perfect comparison. And they're going to know Chris Jenkins really well.
Yes. A great guy, great kid. Like,
his dad was an NFL player, really good player.
A lot to like there. Maris Lafau is a guy that, again, he would not be your starter. He would be a backup. I think he's an interesting guy later in the draft. Certainly not going to wow you athletically, speed-wise, not the fastest guy in the world. But I like him as a linebacker. I think he's a solid linebacker, and I don't think that's the worst. It's a bad linebacker class. So
it is.
Forcing one early does not mean that all of a sudden you got a good one. Like, it just means you got the best of what's a worse position in the draft. Boyd, we talked about. I think it's just a good developmental pick. Generally, later you're going to be getting special teams kind of guys. Boyd doesn't fit that. So I don't know that he's realistically someone, unless you haven't gone defensive interior early. I don't think he's really realistic later. And then Nathaniel Watson, I have not watched Watson yet. I've just heard from, the guys we've talked to about him. So,
and he is a 30 visit with the Seahawks.
He is a 30 visit. So this wasn't as brutal as I thought it would be.
No, because if you look, the middle of the draft, like 41 to 118, is a really good spot for defenders. Like, if you took Cooper DeJean out and put Graham Barden in this and dropped him into this draft, that's pretty much close to your ideal draft. And like round 2 defensive tackle, there's a lot of good value. Sweat, Jenkins, Michael Hall. Round 3 and 4, the safeties are really, really lined up. Potentially linebacker, if you can find a linebacker, if Colson falls to their 3rd rounder, or Cedric Ray, or if you like Barrett, like that defensive sweet spot is right in that 2nd and 4th round. You can see it in all these mocks. And that's why so many teams have moved, like Houston moved down to kind of target that range. But that and offensive guard is in that range as well. But man, like if you just flip DeJean out with one of these guards we've talked about, like I know Rob Rang was a lot higher on Jackson Powers Johnson than maybe you would be, but someone like that, or Barden in the 1st round and that whole rest of the draft, that's an A for me.
Yeah. The linebacker position is going to be fascinating for the draft strategy here because it is paper thin.
And this is why it was so important to get 2 instead of 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people hated on the cap hits of Jordan Brooks, and there's a lot of takes on that are kind of cheating. But getting the 2-for-1 linebacker thing, I know it costs them a lot more in cap this year, but next year you're freed up. So that's where we looked at that. Don't spend the $12 million on Patrick Queen or whatever, because if you don't get that guy, you're forced to draft linebacker in this draft. And that 2-for-1, I know it's not great looking long term, but it allows your draft to be a lot more free rather than forcing something there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to do a quick look here. I wouldn't be surprised if they have an eye on linebackers that they could potentially still sign as free agents after the draft if they don't have the guys that they're looking for. I'm going to pull up really quickly inside linebackers, unrestricted free agents that are available. And I mean, like Zach Cunningham, Quan Alexander, Shaquille Leonard. I mean, none of these guys are guys you want to depend on, but if you strike out, would you rather have Zach Cunningham as your 3rd linebacker as a cheap free agent, or have them reach on a 2nd round pick and miss out on Tavondre Sweat, or miss out on, your favorite interior offensive line prospect, or Michael Hall Jr.? For me, it's an easy one. There's none of these linebackers that I feel so strongly about that I want them to get them no matter what. I really have liked Junior Colson, but I have some questions about his athleticism to where I'm not sure I really don't think he's a 2nd round pick in my mind. I think he's a 3rd round pick.
And that's where I struggle with like Peyton Wilson in the 1st round. I've seen some mocks with that. He's got a ton of medical questions, but I think the opportunity cost of taking a Peyton Wilson in the 1st round would be massive. and it's either defensive tackle, it's either in this scenario, no, but other scenarios, offensive guard, interior offensive line. Taking a linebacker there who has questions, to me, would be such a forced pick at a spot that you can get. Like, look where Fred Warner and Drake Greenlaw were drafted. Look where KJ Wright was drafted. It's not always like you don't need a first round pick to get a linebacker. Obviously, Roquan Smith was like he's like a unicorn, but that's where I don't like Payne Wilson or forcing Colson in the second round. Maybe he's a third round player. I think you got to let the draft come to you, and that's why that 2-for-1 thing was huge.
Agreed. I think that's really well said. Well, Jeff, we are going to wrap there. We've got another show coming up tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. Pacific time after Caitlin Clark and Iowa take on South Carolina for the national championship at noon. So we're going to have Rob Staten and Griff, see Mike Spin move on. And I'm really looking forward because those guys approach the draft in different ways and have different takes. And we're going to kind of see where they are, what's the latest from both of them on their perspectives, and see anyone that's rising or falling in their minds and kind of compare that to where you and I are. I want to remind people, if they haven't already, we got at least 5 new YouTube members on this show, which is awesome, and would love to see more. If you go into the chat, there is a link and you can immediately join as a YouTube member there. It's also in the description of the video. We've also crossed over the 9,500 mark for subscribers. Would love to get over to 10,000 subscribers. So click subscribe and click the bell to get notified when we go live. And of course, join at patreon.com/HawkBlogger. That is where you get the audio versions of all these podcasts, including this one. And they get posted the same day, immediately following the show. So please go ahead and do that. You also get access to the Slack channel immediately. And we're going to do more fun stuff with patrons over time. We've done ticket giveaways. We've done all sorts of things. Patreon.com/HawkBlogger is a great way to support the show. Jeff, thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us, man. Defense only mock draft, 2 of them in the books. We did it. We survived. And I think we learned a little bit along the way.
Yeah, I think that offensive line, man, is that sweet spot in round 1. And I think if you stay at 16 or you trade down, unless you take Byron Murphy, I think I want that offensive guard, interior O-line round 1. And thanks to all the shout outs in the comments about the mic, new mic. A lot of people loving it. I saw a lot of people complimenting me. Kind of takes away from my brand as having like technology from the 1990s, but yeah, I'm still getting used to it. But yeah, thanks to all the shout outs.
Yes, people are loving being able to hear you clearly and not hearing your chair squeaking and all that kind of stuff. It's fantastic. So thank you. And we couldn't do it without all your support. So appreciate that from patrons at patreon.com/HawkBlogger, as well as YouTube members. All that's really helpful. So thank you. That's Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons. Follow him. And I'm Brian Nemhauser at HawkBlogger. This has been another episode of HawkBlogger Mornings. End of it today, but we will be back tomorrow. See you then.